Just one day before the elections, what could be regarded a political bombshell, or at least a mortar, landed from one of the least likely places. Four widely read and influential military newspapers are carrying an editorial today arguing that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld has lost credibility among the troops and that he must go. And with me to discuss it, NBC's Jim Miklaszewski is live at the Pentagon. Mick, I understand this editorial, they say this is not meant to be political, but tell us, where does this come from? Is this from inside the military or some quasi-agency?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember that these military newspapers, the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps Times, are not directly connected to the military, not owned or operated by the military or the Pentagon. They are independent newspapers owned by the Gannett newspaper chain, which cater to the military and military families. Now, that said, it is nonetheless very remarkable for these newspapers to take the kind of position it has in asking that the Defense Secretary of the United States, in this case Donald Rumsfeld, resign. In my more than 20 years of off and on covering the military, I've never seen anything like it. But it's just one in a string of remarkable developments aimed at Donald Rumsfeld. First, we had the former generals. It was called the Revolt of the Generals, many who had served in Iraq, calling for Rumsfeld's resignation for what they say was his conduct of the war. And then we had some very public splits between Rumsfeld and some of the military leadership on some of the details of how the war was conducted and the developments occurring in Iraq. Now, according to these Times, these military Times newspapers, it said it is one thing for the majority of Americans to think Rumsfeld has failed, but when the nation's current military leaders start to break publicly with the Defense Secretary, then it's clear he is losing control of the institution he ostensibly leads. The papers go on to say in this editorial, Rumsfeld has lost credibility with the uniformed leadership, the troops, with Congress, and the public at large. Donald Rumsfeld must go. Now, in response, the Pentagon simply declares that Secretary Rumsfeld rejects the editorial's premise that Rumsfeld and the administration have offered one rosy assertion after another, and said that Rumsfeld has always been measured in his determination or his estimation of how long it would take to win the war in Iraq. Nevertheless, the newspapers felt it their duty, editorial duty, to call for Rumsfeld's resignation. Lester.
All right, Jim Miklaszewski at the Pentagon with that. Jim, thanks.